The restaurant had the kind of lighting designed to soften everything. Low amber bulbs, polished glasses, a tablecloth so white it looked untouched by the world outside. It was the sort of place my father liked, somewhere that made his voice carry just far enough to be noticed. Family dinners with him were rarely about food. They were performances. I sat halfway down the table, between my aunt and my cousin, watching the familiar choreography unfold. My father leaning back in his chair, my stepmother adjusting the silverware with quiet precision. The waiter refilling glasses like he had done this 100 times before. Everyone looked relaxed. Everyone except the people who knew how these evenings usually ended. The plates had barely been cleared when my father tapped his glass with a fork. A soft ringing spread across the table. He stood, smiling in the way he always did when he believed the room belonged to him. "I'd like to make a toast," he said. My aunt straightened. My cousin smiled politely. Someone across the table shifted in their seat. I already knew the shape of what was coming. My father raised his glass. "To Elena," he said. A few people turned toward me. He paused long enough for the attention to settle. "The family's backup plan." There was a ripple of laughter. Not loud, not cruel exactly, just the kind people offer when they sense they're supposed to. I watched my glass instead of his face. Backup plan. It wasn't a new phrase. My father liked to use it when explaining why I'd gone into finance instead of joining the family business. In his telling, I was the practical one, the one you keep around in case the real plan fails. A safety net, someone reliable but replaceable. Across the table, my cousin avoided my eyes. My father continued speaking, adding something about loyalty and responsibility. The words blurred together, the way they often did during these speeches. For a long time, I used to argue with him afterward. Eventually I stopped. Tonight, though, something felt different, not in the room, but inside me. I reached for my phone. It wasn't a dramatic movement. Just a quiet check, like someone glancing at the time. A notification sat at the top of the screen. I had been waiting for it all evening. The banking alert was brief. Account access restricted, regulatory hold initiated. For a moment I simply looked at the words. 3 weeks earlier, I had been sitting in a much smaller office, across from a lawyer, who spoke in careful, measured sentences. The document spread between us had told a story my father never intended anyone outside the company to read. Transfers routed through shell vendors, loans that existed only on paper, accounts that should not have existed at all. At first I thought it was a mistake. Then I realized it wasn't. I remembered asking the lawyer one question. "What happens if I report this?" He had leaned back slightly, considering. "The investigation would begin immediately," he said. "And if the evidence holds, the accounts tied to those transactions will be frozen." I had nodded, not because I was angry. Because silence would have made me part of it. Back at the dinner table my father finished his toast. Glasses lifted. The room returned to its low murmur of conversation. I set my phone down beside my plate. The waiter passed behind me, carrying a tray of water glasses. "Excuse me," I said quietly. He stopped. I slid a sealed envelope from my bag and placed it in his hand. "Could you give this to my father?" I asked. The waiter looked at the name written across the front, then toward the head of the table. "Of course." He walked over with the careful neutrality of someone used to delivering things without asking questions. My father looked mildly confused when the envelope was placed beside his plate. "For you, sir." He opened it slowly. The first page had the agency letterhead across the top. The rest was dense with language no one outside finance or law usually reads. His expression changed almost immediately. Not dramatically. Just enough that I could see the moment calculation replaced confidence. The conversation around the table thinned into uncertain silence. My aunt stopped mid-sentence. My cousin stared at the tablecloth. My father turned the page, then another. I lifted my glass and took a small sip of water. Finally he looked up at me. Not angry, just studying me in a way he never had before. "That's funny," I said gently. The words hung there, echoing the line he had used minutes earlier. He didn't respond. The waiter was still standing nearby, unsure whether to leave. I offered him a polite smile, because the backup plan, I said quietly, just froze your assets. No one laughed this time. My father folded the report carefully and set it beside his glass. For a long moment he didn't speak. Around us, forks resumed moving against plates in hesitant rhythm. Conversations tried to restart and failed. Nothing dramatic happened. No shouting, no accusations. Just the steady realization spreading across the table that whatever had been holding the evening together had broken. The business accounts would be inaccessible by morning. Payroll wouldn't go out. Operations would stop. Not forever, maybe, but long enough for investigators to start asking questions. My father leaned back in his chair. For the first time that evening, he wasn't performing. He looked at me again, longer this time, as if trying to understand something he had overlooked for years. I finished the last few bites of my dinner. The food had gone cold. Across the table my cousin finally met my eyes, uncertainty written across his face. I gave him a small, neutral nod. The waiter cleared the plates quietly. No one asked for dessert. When the bill arrived, my father didn't reach for it right away. The folded report sat beside his glass, heavier than anything else on the table. For once the room no longer belonged to him, and no one felt like raising another toast.